Ghana and South Africa are once again at the center of a very interesting diplomatic story. And this time, it is not about football. It is not about Jacinta, and it is not about who has the better economy. Yes, millions of dollars connected to the repatriation of African migrants from South Africa. And when this story first started circulating, the question many people were asking was, is Ghana going to receive an 18 million from South Africa or 18 million bill from South Africa? Ghana's government is now saying, not so fast. Ghana says it did not ask South Africa to finance the evacuation of its citizens. Ghana says it pays for its own evacuation. And according to Ghana's foreign minister, Ablakwa, Ghana is not among the countries South Africa is asking to reimburse the cost. So today, we need to slow down and separate the headlines from the facts. Who actually spend the money? Who is South Africa asking to pay? Why is Ghana not on that list? And perhaps the biggest question, why did more than 1,600 Ghanaians have to leave South Africa in the first place? Because behind this 18 million story is a much bigger conversation about xenophobia, African unity, migration, and the responsibility governments have towards their citizens. Let's get into it. Yes. Let's start with the basic facts. South Africa has been dealing with renewed tensions involving foreign nationals, including reports of xenophobic attacks and pressure on migrants to leave. Ghanaians were among the foreign nationals affected. And since May 2026, Ghana has been evacuating its citizens from South Africa. The Ghanaian government says more than 1,600 Ghanaians have been brought back home, and the evacuation exercise is still continuing. Now, here is where things become interesting. South Africa says it has spent almost $18 million, approximately 292 million rands, on repatriating foreign nationals through its immigration and enforcement operation. So naturally, South Africa is asking, who is going to reimburse some of this money? But Ghana says we are not part of that arrangement. This is where we need to be very careful, because social media headlines can make it sound like South Africa sends Ghana 18 million bill. But that is not what the current evidence shows. Ghana's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement today, August 13th, saying that the evacuation of Ghanaians was fully funded by the government of Ghana and Ghanaian partners. The ministry says Ghana did not seek financial or material assistance from the South African government for the evacuation of its citizens. And Ghana went even further. The government says Ghana will not be among the countries asking to reimburse South Africa. So if somebody tells you Ghana has been billed 18 million by South Africa, that statement is misleading. The 18 million figure refers to the border costs incurred by the South Africa in repatriating foreign nationals. It is not a 18 million bill specifically sent to Ghana. That distinguish is extremely important, because there are actual two separate stories here. From South Africa's perspective, the argument appears to be, if your nationals are being repatriated using South African resources, why should South African taxpayers carry the entire cost? That is a legitimate question to ask. But there is another side. This is where the debate becomes much more complicated. Ghanaians' argument is essentially, we took responsibility for our own citizens. And honestly, that is an important distinction. Ghana did not simply wait for South Africa to arrange everything. The Ghanaian government says it financed the evacuation itself, with support from Ghanaian partners. Now let's move beyond the money, because if we focus only on the 18 million, dollars, we are missing the bigger story. Why were African governments evacuating their citizens from another African country? That is the uncomfortable question. Xenophobia can turn ordinary economy or economic infrastructure into hostility towards foreigners. That is the bigger tragedy, because we are talking about Africans fighting Africans, people whose ancestors share borders that were drawn by colonial governments, people who speak different languages but share many cultural similarities, people who are all trying to survive the same global economic pressure. And yet, when things become difficult, the foreigner can become the easiest person to blame. But there is a major distinction. If people are being forced to leave because of deportation or immigration enforcement, that is one situation. If people are fleeing because they fear violence and xenophobia attacks, that becomes a humanitarian issue. And those two situations shouldn't automatically be treated as the same thing. What happened after they arrive? If someone spent 5 years building a business in South Africa and suddenly come home because of insecurity, what happened to their livelihood? If somebody had a job there, what happens now? If someone left Ghana because they couldn't find opportunities, are those opportunities suddenly available when they return? That's where Ghana needs to be strategic, because evacuation without reintegration can simply become a temporary solution. People need jobs, people need capital, people need housing, people need opportunities. Otherwise, some of these returnees may eventually decide to leave Ghana again. And this is where I want to be very careful. I don't want this video to become Ghana versus South Africa, because ordinary Ghanaians and ordinary South Africans are not the problem. This is a government level issue. It is a migration issue. It is an economic issue. It is a diplomatic issue. And it is a continental African issue. We should be able to criticize governments without attacking entire nationalities, because the moment we start saying South Africa are like this or Ghanaians are like that, we are making the same mistake that creates xenophobia in the first place. African countries need stronger diplomatic mechanisms for handling these situations. If a crisis happens in South Africa, Ghana should be able to protect its citizens. If a crisis happens in Ghana, South Africans should be able to protect its citizens. So let us answer the question from the title: who is telling the truth about the 18 million? Well, based on the information available today, there is no evidence that Ghana has been handed an 18 million bill by South Africa. South Africa did spend approximately $18 million or 292 million rands on repatriation related operations. South Africa is seeking reimbursement from several African countries, but Ghana says it's independently financed the evacuation of its citizens, and Ghana has been specifically excluded from the reimbursement list. At the end of the day, this isn't really about the $18 million. It's about something much bigger. It's about how African governments protect their citizens. It's about how African countries handle migration. It's about xenophobia, and it's about responsibility, and it's about whether African countries can actually work together when crisis hits.